I'm James Cridland, the radio futurologist, and this is Radioland, my radio trends newsletter. You can get it at radioland.email. And this is November the 16th, 2025. Tim Davie, Heart, AI Traffic, and ACMA again. I'm really sorry, James, but I won't be able to see your talk tomorrow. That was the last time Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC, spoke to me at a public service broadcasting conference in Canada in 2024. Earlier, Tim had started his speech in a self-deprecating way, saying that overseas conferences like these he has to explain what Director General means, since virtually nobody knows. Apparently the usual reaction is, "What, so you're in charge of the whole thing?" Later that day, he came to find me, to apologise for having to leave early the next morning. That's the BBC's CEO, the man in charge of, by some measures, the biggest broadcaster in the world, who spent time to come and find me, an insignificant guy who writes a podcast newsletter for a living, and this newsletter for fun. And that made me feel quite special. Having worked at the BBC at the same time as Tim Davie, I was in 2 meetings with him during my entire career. I welcomed his appointment in 2020 on my blog. He's impatient to get stuff done, aggressively clear-minded, and doubtless has made mistakes. But he's a good thing, a decent man, and he'll be missed at the BBC. The real crisis in public service broadcasting is that there's no one immediately obvious who'll replace him. And to be honest, who'd want to? And no, if you're expecting me to opine about the BBC's current crisis, there'll be none of that. I would just gently point out that the public of the UK pay £3.8 billion a year for the BBC. 84% of UK adults use the BBC every week. 70% of them thinks it does a good job. 62% of them still believe BBC News is trustworthy, in spite of every other media source telling them otherwise every single day. So if Donald Trump really thinks that he deserves $5 billion of the UK's public money because he was badly edited, well, he needs to give his head a wobble. In Australia, Southern Cross Austereo has launched a radio service called Heart. And if you're expecting to be able to turn up the feel-good and enjoy a version of the vibrant Heart from the UK, then you'll be disappointed. It's a non-stop music service promising interruption-free music with no talk, as long as you don't count the constant voiceovers between every song as either talk or interruptions. I'm speaking at Radio Days Europe next March about the future of radio, and as part of that, I've got opinions about this sort of thing. If you want to hear a 30-minute telescope of SCA's Heart, then you can find one in my blog, which you'll find linked from the show notes today. A fun game is to count the number of different positioning statements in that 30 minutes of telescoped Heart. I counted 9. Here's a little clip of one of their music positioners.
You're listening to Your Heart. Relaxation uninterrupted.
Whatever I said, whatever I did, I didn't mean it. I just want you back for good.
Heart plays your relaxing soundtrack to a calmer day. Escape and unwind with Heart's non-stop music variety and no talk. Listen to Your Heart.
Oh, sorry, I nodded off for a minute there. In the US, podcasting is probably the hottest category of media right now. That's according to none other than iHeart CEO Bob Pittman. iHeartMedia announced its financial report for Q3 25. Podcast revenue grew 22.5% year on year to $139.7 million US. About half of iHeart's podcasting advertising revenue came from iHeart's local sales force, and that figure was just 11% in Q3 2020. Podcasting contributed a record 14% to the business's revenue. And Pittman said, "We believe we have the most profitable podcasting business in the United States." However, the multi-platform group, which runs the radio stations, saw revenue down 5%. The company announced an additional $50 million of savings for next year. Now, I covered AI-powered news last week, not particularly positively, but in the UK, Bauer are now producing AI-voiced travel news bulletins, working with INRIX. Bauer produces seemingly 100 different versions of Greatest Hits Radio, if I've counted them correctly, and about 40 versions of Hits Radio, which is their top 40 brand. Theoretically, at breakfast, this system could deliver more than 300 properly local travel bulletins in just 1 hour. As I understand it, the news is still humanly produced. It just uses AI voices. And for what it's worth, I think this is precisely what AI is good for, leading to better, more local information. I think it's quite impressive, particularly impressive when you listen to a little bit of audio.
Hits Radio.
A lorry fire has closed the A1 northbound from St Neots to Little Paxton, with diversions via the A428 towards Cambridge, A1198 towards Godman Chester, and A14 back to the A1. The A47 is partially blocked eastbound at Cromwell Road in Wisbech due to an accident. There are 10-minute delays on the A1101 Elm High Road at the Elm Hall roundabout in Wisbech, while queues on the A16 southbound at the A47 in Eye are causing 10-minute delays. That's the latest.
Travel.
With the Rayo app, the home of hits radio, music, radio, podcasts. Download the Rayo app now.
Nice to hear a northeastern accent as well on the radio too. Now, in the UK, Jet, the radio trading system, has added digital audio trading, including podcasts, to its tool. It's working with Global's DAX and Bauer's Audio XI. Jet is a pretty cool thing, actually. It's been digitally trading linear radio since 2002, and it handles more than 98% of national radio sales in the country. In the US, the opposite is happening. Ad buying platform Stack Adapt announced an integration with iHeartMedia to incorporate broadcast radio into its programmatic ad planning tools that people are currently using for podcasts. Interesting times for both, nonetheless. In Canada, TuneIn has been acquired by Canadian broadcaster Stingray for as much as $175 million. TuneIn maintains live radio and podcast databases used by companies like Apple, Google and auto manufacturers, but has made multiple layoffs over the past few years and removed the ability for podcasters to submit new podcasts into its database in February 2024. I'm quite excited to see new life breathed into TuneIn. I would note that TuneIn's ads are sold in the US by iHeart. Stingray is a competitor of iHeart in Canada. In Australia, ARN issued a trading update warning that profit for this year is likely to be down 27%. And that October ad revenue is down 10% year on year. In June, radio competitor SCA reported 5% in year-on-year revenue growth, while ARN reported at the time a 7% decline in revenue. You'd have to assume that the mad fudging witches, as I call them on this podcast, they are running a campaign against Kyle and Jackie O. That has resulted in more than 540 advertisers withdrawing from the show. And it also means that many radio stations who take the Kyle and Jackie O Power Hour, which is an hour show that ARN provides across their network, are doing it entirely ad-free these days. Now, that presumably is having quite some effect on the revenue. ARN says it's going to make more cuts, by the way. Meanwhile, Kyle and Jackie O are still trousering $20 million a year. Speaking of which, breaking news, ACMA has acted against Kyle and Jackie O. No, wait, they've proposed action against Kyle and Jackie O. And the action they've proposed is that ARN has to follow the existing rules as a license condition. Now, literally, that is it. It's now up to ARN to respond to ACMA's proposal by December the 3rd. And then ACMA will think about their response, and then presumably next year at some point, ACMA will formally suggest that ARN must now follow the rules or else. Now, if this seems utterly pointless to you, as I understand it, ACMA actually lacks any authority to do anything unless it's a breach of a license condition. And the existing CRA Code of Practice isn't actually a license condition. It's just a gentleman's agreement of what commercial radio will do. And I link to the commercial radio codes of practice and, for good measure, the community radio codes of practice as well from the newsletter this week. You might ask yourself why the Australian industry's codes of practice aren't de facto license conditions, as I did, but who knows? I've asked ACMA about this via their public email address and got no response. And if they have a press office, well, it's very well hidden from the press. Anyway, judging by Kyle's reaction, it seems that this could be quite serious. Now he's been told to follow the rules, Kyle is incensed, calling them fake complaints and threatening to leave. We can only hope. Meanwhile, radio expert Wade Kingsley, who supports this very newsletter, agrees with Kyle and thinks that any attempt to curb the obscenities he feeds his audience, 16% of whom are kids, is, quotes, censorship. I would agree if Kyle wasn't using public spectrum. He can do what he likes online, but if you've been gifted public spectrum, which is there for everyone, you should at least attempt public decency. And, by the way, ARN is gifted it. Commercial radio normally pays for access to public radio spectrum under the commercial broadcasting tax, which is $51,000 a year per transmitter for high-density areas. That's about £25,000 or $33,000 US. This year, though, there's no charge for reasons of temporary relief, which reminds me of the contents of one of Carl's segments. And thank you to Radioland reader Henry for three coffees. He says, I discovered your newsletter inadvertently, and your coverage of the shifting BBC landscape has kept my interest. Thanks for all that you do. Well, thank you, Henry. That's good of you. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland is where to buy me a coffee, just like Henry did. Next, I'm speaking at Radio Days Europe in Riga in Latvia in March. I know, still not on a plane. It's brilliant. And I can now tell you the title and description of my talk if you're interested. And this will probably come as a surprise to the organisers who I know listen to this. But anyway, the title is The Future of Audio is People-Powered. The way people consume media is changing. James Cridland, the radio futurologist, that's me, takes a look at global trends in radio and on demand. How will we listen? On which devices? How can we make our output truly unique? How do we do it in a resource-efficient way? And what part does video play in the future of audio? In this wide-ranging session, bringing together data from North America, Asia, Australia and Europe, we'll learn why the future is bright as long as we understand why our audience comes to us in the first place. Blimey, I'd go. Anyway, radiodayseurope.com for your tickets if you wish to do that. I've never been to Latvia before. Looking forward to it. I better book the plane ticket. I say that every week. I should probably get on with it. And thank you to the supporters who support this very podcast and the newsletter every single week. Meliora. Thank you to you, Mr. Dickens et al. Also, Wade Kingsley, the wrongly headed creative coach, the good folks at Media Realm, Media Results Inc. and Radio King, all of those fine people, along with Greg Strassel, Sam Phelps, or is it Greg Strassel? I should find out one day. Richard Hilton, Emma Gibbs, Jocelyn Abbey and James Masterton for being regular supporters. If you would like to support my work in any way, you can buy me a coffee, become a member to give regularly, or just give a one-off coffee or five, then that's absolutely fine. buymeacoffee.com/James Cridland. If you don't feel that you have to, absolutely fine. Please, if you can, that would be awesome too. And please do follow me on Mastodon, on the Fediverse, James at bne.social, that's BNE for Brisbane, James at bne.social. And my website has more details about who I am, what I do, and whether I can help you further. That is at james.cridland.net. And until next time, keep listening.